Hi everyone, welcome to Stress Management for Healthy Living, Kinesiology 2700. It is based on the work from Unstressed, a book on emotional health and healing, written by Dr. Elaine Doherty, a writer, speaker, professor, and blog writer for Psychology Today. This is Module 11, True Hope versus Wishful Thinking. So before we start, I think we need to talk a little bit about what hope might be. Because hope, I think, sometimes sounds like this vague construct or some lofty ideal that really doesn't have any grounding in reality, or something that we just think that we should do, but we really don't believe it at all, and or asks us to put our faith in something that just really has no basis of coming true. And for hope to be constructive hope, and we see all kinds of amazing things in research about when hope is positively utilized, that it's not wishful thinking. It's way different than wishful thinking. True hope embodies a deep belief and confidence in the future, not just wishful thinking of I'm grounded in this or mired in this hard space, and I just wish something would be better, but I really don't believe that it ever will. And so hope is this idea that it really is an embodied sense of true confidence in the future, and it can be trained. So research has shown that cultivating hope in specific ways gives you a deep feeling of resilience in the face of hopelessness, and overall feelings of resilience, overall feelings of optimism, and also has shown that there are necessary criteria to distinguish or differentiate between what really true hope is as opposed to wishful thinking. And so there are very specific criteria, and so there's a process that you can go through step by step to cultivate what is constructive hope, and to really ground yourself in the belief that things will be better, that things can get better, and that you actually have the potential to make those things happen. And so we're going to get into all of that stuff. We're going to get into understanding what those steps are. You're going to be walked through your own process, and then culminating in a practice where you will have hope for a vision of yourself in something that you may have been struggling with. So we're going to get to all of that in a minute. But first, what I want to do is I just want to kind of ground us in where we've been, what the heart practices are all about, what intentionally cultivating your calm and connection system is all about. Remember, we talked about recognize and release. That was the first, reducing your fear response. But then we went into what does it mean to really replace with things that will cultivate your calm and connection system. So we're just going to jump back into a little review of that first.
So what we talked about last week was starting the heart tools. And that's notice, refocus, and nurture. Noticing is just noticing what's kind of present for you, whether it's a trigger or not. It could be a trigger. If you get really triggered during the day, just noticing when that comes up and not letting it consume you, but also not suppressing it, just noticing from a disengaged point of view. Because again, that stops your regular spiral.
The refocus step.
Totally resets your physiology. Remember, your physiology and your emotion is a continual feedback loop. You change your physiology, you change your emotion. So the refocus step is just releasing through your eyes, releasing through your shoulders, a little relaxed down and back, raising your sternum a little bit, and just breathing. Resets everything that's going on in your reactive state. And then the nurture is to automatically, or not automatically, intentionally create a different state of being. And what I did last Wednesday is give you a space where you kind of wrote images, and those images are things that you may or may not want to bring up the felt sensation. Remember, it's the felt sensation that begins to shift you. So notice, refocus, and nurture. Notice where your attention is, both mental, emotional, physical. Reset your whole physiology. and then intentionally engage in something else. Notice, refocus, and nurture. Heart in the moment was what we talked about last week and what I asked you to practice a couple times a day. And again, it only takes a moment to practice, so that shouldn't be a big assignment there. But the idea was in the middle of the day, in the middle of reactivity maybe, but maybe not even in the middle of reactivity, maybe just in a moment that you want to reset yourself, to just practice those tools. And again, whatever you bring up, the idea is to bring up something. I had you do that image list because it helps you to remember. You don't have to pull up something on that list. And if something on that list isn't momentarily making you feel good, then it's not the thing to use, because it's the emotional shift that we're looking for, not necessarily theoretically what you think should be the things on the list. So notice, refocus, and nurture. Now we're going to get deeper into some of those tools, the way you might be using them for specific purposes. And today what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about a really misunderstood word and a really misunderstood concept. But if you get it down, it can really make a difference in your life in terms of transformation and in terms of really taking care of the things that are most troubling you right now. So we're going to talk about hope. And see, the problem is with the word hope is most people hear hope and they think wishful thinking. And wishful thinking doesn't work. Or they think of hope as some pie in the sky thing that I could, wish for, but it's really not what I'm experiencing right now, so why even try? And it just really becomes a more disdained concept than anything else. And the truth is, if you really understand what hope is, and you really pay attention to what's required for true hope, huge shifts take place in you overall, but also in the things that you're most hoping to get out of. Because what happens most of the time when we're struggling with an issue, what do? We only focus on the issue. And we focus and focus and focus, and guess what? Energy goes where attention flows. If all your attention is on the problem, that's completely where your energy is going to be focused. And it's never going to be focused on how to get out of that problem. So I'm going to have you write various things today. So you're going to do a lot of different writing, but again, it's going to be directed writing. And this is all about how do you engage authentic hope.
So in just a minute, we're going to talk about what the requirements for true hope are. But let me just ground this before we go on. Let me ground this a little bit in all the content that we've been talking about so far. So just to remind you, we have two drives that run our life. One is our fear response drive, and one is our calm and connection drive. We had to have both. We can't be in both at once from a physiological standpoint, and the one that we're in is the one that flourishes and creates a greater capacity to live from that drive. So let's talk about that with constructive hope versus wishful thinking, right? When we're just wishful thinking, in other words, we're mired in our problems, all we're seeing is the problems, and we kind of wish it would be better and may have some vague idea of what that might look like, but we're really mired in our problems. Where are we? We're mired in our fear response drive. Even though we may be wishing for something different, what we're really embodying, and which means that that's what we're creating more of the capacity for, is our fear response drive. So when we're really grounded in what constructive hope is, and remember at the beginning I said that constructive hope is a real deep belief and confidence in the fact that things could be better, or the confidence in a different vision of the future. Where are we grounded? We're grounded in our calm and connection system. So just even the physiological state, and remember when we looked at the emotional charting exercise, right? words above the line on the chart were physiological states of healing. The words below the line on the chart were physiological states that are contradictory to healing. Again, I'm not saying they're bad. We talked a lot about last time about how to go back and rebalance those. But if we're just in a place where we're still mired in the chaos, but we're kind of wishing that it weren't true, we're still mired in that spot. We're still mired in those places below that line, which is in the physiological state that is not conducive to healing. So again, let's talk about emotion as the primary drive of each of those systems. If we're, again, mired in the chaos, then our whole system is in chaos. We're just creating the capacity for more chaos. And as chaotic as unstable emotional can be, grounded, loving, and compassionate emotion may be our greatest asset. So when we're really grounded in the confidence of hope and the belief that things can get better, it's a whole different embodied experience. So it's the quality and the context of that embodied experience that creates the capacity for more than the same. So true hope versus wishful thinking are completely different in the way that we embodied those emotions. Again, wishful thinking is like we're down, we're drowning. We may have an idea, but we're drowning, and all we can see is the drowning. And then when we're really grounded in what constructive hope is, we feel like we have wings. We have the means to get there. And so, and again, every moment of every day we're transforming, whether we know it or not, whether we like it or not. And when we're grounded in hope, it's the same thing. We're transforming into the state where we actually have the capacity to grow into those states that we're hoping for. So what do we need for true hope? And how do we authentically cultivate it in our day-to-day life? Remember, it's our experience that changes us. So how do we shift from an experience of being mired in the chaos but wishing things were different to really being grounded in the belief that things really can get better, and they will get better? And so we need some everyday shifts, everyday practices to be able to help us cultivate a different and more confident vision of the future. I just want to remind you of the little metaphor that I told you about that Dr. Habib Sadeki wrote about in the foreword to my book, was that a big tanker ship, and the captain that controls that can manipulate that major piece of machinery by a little tiny rudder. He doesn't move the big rudder. He moves a little tiny rudder that moves the big rudder that moves the whole big tanker. It can completely change directions 100 miles down the sea. But it's just the little tiny shifts, the everyday shifts. In the world of neuroscience, it's the everyday shifts that begin to cause big transformations. So in the world of hope, we need a couple things in place first, and then we need to start making the everyday shifts for those things to really stabilize in our lives. And as you'll soon see, those requirements for constructive hope are agency, pathways, and a vision of your future self.
Couple things that are absolutely necessary for true hope. Number one, to understand it's not just wishful thinking, that you have some sense of personal agency. Anybody know what agency means? Agency means your capability to do something. So a lot of times when we're immersed in a problem or an issue, we think we have no capacity to get ourselves out of it. And agency is just a shift in being able to recognize, number one, that you have a lot more capacity to get yourself out of some of the problems that you're having. And number two, that a lot of times just recognizing your agency in little areas helps you cultivate it in bigger areas. We also have something called pathways, which is the belief that there are ways to get there. So in other words, if I'm only focusing on a problem, most of the time I don't even have an idea of what it would look like if it were working. I mean, this is really true. Most of the time, all we can do is focus on whatever's going on wrong. We have no idea what that situation would really look like if it were working. And so being able to have some clarity on what it would look like if it were working helps the pathways emerge. Sometimes it helps you see the pathways. Sometimes with just clarity about what it would look like if it were working, then when things begin to unfold, you begin to see the pathways. They might not be immediately apparent. But that's because, again, you're training your brain. When you train your brain to see clarity in what it would look like if it were working, then the part of your brain, remember the part of your brain that's beyond your awareness is only programmed to what it knows, but you can program it to look for the things that are going to help you get to the space of what it would look like if it were working. And then the third piece, so it's agency, pathways, and then the third piece, and in the pathways is clarity. The third piece is being able to really see a vision of yourself beyond the struggle. Because most of the time we don't. We don't really know what it would look like. And you don't have to know immediately, but what I'm going to do is try to push you into that today. Because by taking some time and really forcing yourself into look, wow, what would this look like if it were working? What would I look like if I were more beyond this, handling it better, or I was in a place where it was working out? So I'm just gonna kind of invite you to write about all of those things. So the very first thing, get out something. So now you can get out your computer. If you're writing your computer, get out a piece of paper to write with.
So what you're going to be doing this week is one long reflection with several different identified parts, all structured around the idea of what is really constructive hope. Hope in a way that really makes you achieve what you're trying to achieve, or gets you out of the situations that aren't healthy for you that you need to be getting out of, the stressful situations, the situations that cause you anxiety, the situations that right now you might not be able to see beyond being immersed in. So the very first piece of this is called What Went Well and Why. And this is what this is designed to do, is designed to get you to focus on your personal strengths, and that sometimes we just totally overlook our personal strengths, and we totally overlook the idea that we actually play a part in what goes well a lot of the times, and we tend to overlook that. So the very first thing you're going to do is you're going to on a piece of paper. I would suggest you do this on a piece of paper. You can do it on your computer, and I'm just suggesting a piece of paper because I'm not that computer savvy to be able to do two sides easily. But you need to have a piece of paper, or the way the computer's set up, that there's a line down the middle of a page. And on the left side, you are going to reflect over, maybe the last couple of weeks, maybe the last month or so, maybe just the last couple of days. It doesn't really matter. But what I want you to do is I want you to just think back on a few instances that went really well for you. We're so focused on everything that goes wrong all the time. I just want you to allow yourself for a little while to focus on what went well. And kind of focus on some detail about the situation and what went well about it. And then on the right hand side, next to that situation, and again, you can do one really deep situation. I would suggest you do 2 or 3 different situations. And I want you to really focus on why it went well. And when you're focusing on why it went well, so on the left side is just the situation itself, and then on the right side, I want you to really kind of discern a little bit about why it went well, and then also kind of think about what part you played in that. And so again, either one situation that you can get really deeply into, or 2 or 3 different situations, and that's called What Went Well and Why. It's a takeoff on a exercise developed by Martin Seligman, who is kind of known as one of the fathers of positive psychology.
So you need to pause the recording because I'd like you to write on this prompt for at least 10 to 12 minutes.
What I'd like you to do is go back and kind of look over the part where you wrote the what went well and why, the why part. And I'm just going to give you a couple minutes that I want you to write couple paragraphs on what personal strengths that you have that played out into why it went well. So again, you're just kind of now generalizing a little bit more into what are your personal strengths that played a part in that situation.
Again, pause the recording because you'll need to be writing somewhere from 3 to 5 minutes. Again, a paragraph on what, kind of just pulling out some of your personal strengths of why it went well. And then also the second couple of paragraphs, I want you to generalize, maybe that beyond that specific situation, just begin to widen it out and generalize about what personal strengths you have in general that contribute to things going well in your life sometimes. Often we don't give ourselves a chance to focus on our personal strengths. And so this piece is to just really write a few paragraphs. Again, the first couple paragraphs about that specific situation, and then another couple paragraphs about generalizing what are some of your personal strengths. That is your agency.
So the next piece is discerning clarity of what we do want through the contrast of what we don't want.
Because the biggest problem when we have issues, again, specific circumstances or general circumstances that aren't working well for us, are because we're so focused on that, we have no idea what it would really look like if it were working. No idea. We can tell you exactly everything that's wrong with it, but if I said, you know, and I use the kind of look like in quotation marks, what would it look like if it were working? And most people, not just students, go, wow, I really have no idea what it would really look like. So contrast versus clarity asked you to be really specific about what it would look like if it were working. And again, it's not just, you know, I have trouble communicating with this person and it would look like that we would communicate well. No, specifically, what does that mean? How would that communication happen? You know, what would stimulate it? How would it transpire? I mean, really specifically, because they've done a lot of research on solutions, finding solutions. This is done a lot in corporate work, but it's not just corporate work. And what they found is that the more detail you can describe in what it would look like, not necessarily how you're going to get there, that comes later, but what it would really look like if it were working in as much detail, then the answers just begin to emerge.
So the next piece of this now is called discerning clarity. And what this exercise is about is really trying to find out, again, so many times when we're immersed in a troubling situation or kind of a series of events or a kind of an issue that is troubling us or causing us stress or causing us anxiety, again, so much of our focus on that is that we don't even really know what it would look like if it were working. And so what this exercise does is, again, asks you to draw another line down the middle of the paper. And now you're going to focus on a specific problem or a specific issue, or maybe 2 or 3 different specific problems or issues. And on the left side, you're going to very detailed a very detailed description on the things that aren't working. So in other words, I want you, instead of saying we don't communicate well, I want you to really specifically detail what it looks like when you're not communicating well, or I'm not keeping up with my homework, and I want you to really specifically detail what it is, what are the specifics and the reason why you're not. And so the more detail you can give to the problem, the better. And then on the right side, I want you to, again, in very, very, very distinct detail, write what it would look like if it were working. So again, going back to that communication example, it's not we don't communicate well, we would communicate well. I want you to really specifically detail what that communication would look like if it were working. What would be the dynamics? What would be the practices? How would that, So the more detail that you can give to the vision, and again, you don't need to figure it out. Right now, we call the means whereby is figuring it out. You don't need to figure it out now. Right now, what you need to do is you need to just focus on an image of what it really would look like with the detail if it were working. So again, you're going to do this exercise and and give yourself again about 10 minutes. So again, you're gonna need to pause the computer or pause the recording for about 10 minutes while you write on the discerning clarity exercise, following the instructions on the slide.
Okay, so it's super important to name that when you're doing the discern clarity exercise, you don't have to figure out how to get there. Okay, right now we just want to see a crystal vision of what it would look like if it were working. And then what happens is the pathways just begin to make themselves known, because what's happening is you're training your brain to look for the end product. Therefore, the means whereby begin to just surface in your consciousness. In other words, you may pick up an opportunity that you might not have if you were just mired in what was going on. And so you don't need to right now, they'll come later, but you don't need to right now determine how you're going to get there. If things come up, if light bulbs go off, go ahead and write that down, absolutely. But again, the idea isn't like, how am I going to figure out how to get there? The idea is, what would that end product look like?
Because a lot of times what happens when you start doing the contrast versus clarity, the more detail you start getting in the clarity side, then it's like, oh yeah, I could do this, and I could do this, and I could do this. So then that's where the pathways come in. The pathways begin to make themselves known. If you struggle and struggle and struggle and try to figure them out, most of the time you can't figure them out. But if you have this end vision, then they start making themselves known. And also then the third piece, the really important piece here, is to have what we call a vision of your future self. It's not just a vision of what the thing would look like if it were working, but how would you be in that situation when it were working? What are your personal strengths that would be playing out in that situation? And there's been all kinds of research done. I can't impress this enough, because we usually don't do this. We usually focus on the problem, and then we focus on all our shortcomings in the problem, right? So this is asking you, the third piece here is a vision of your future self. And again, I'm talking in context to whatever situation you were writing about. But if you can begin to look at kind of the best possible vision of your future self in that context, then again, even more pathways begin to emerge. Because that's not what we usually do. We usually, again, focus on all the things that are wrong, and then we focus on all our shortcomings of why they're wrong, or how we can't be able to address the situation, either personally or because the situation is so bad, and we never give any thought to the other. And so if all those things are in place, then that's kind of a whole new definition of what hope is. And there's all kinds of research in positive psychology that shows that if hope is approached that way, it gives you a confidence in the future rather than the opposite. Wishful thinking is, I'm immersed in this problem. I have absolutely no confidence that it's going to work out. I have absolutely no confidence that I have the wherewithal to make it work out, right? But true hope, when it's approached in that context, gives us some kind of framework of really being able to get there. And if all those things are in place, then most of the time, some true transformation can take place. So you've done what went well and why. You focused on some of your personal aspects and your personal strengths about how that went well. The third piece of this is I want you to write, and it's just your best possible future self. And what I asked you to do, and I know some people are doing this kind of more broadly about a bigger context situation. Some people are doing it in one really specific event. It's totally up to you. But now what I want you to do is I'm going to give you about 10 minutes to write. I want you to be as detailed and vivid as you can about what your future possible self looks like in regard to this situation.
Again, you're going to need to pause the recording for about 10 minutes. And this time you are going to write a narrative of a detailed description of what your best possible future self really looks like in this situation, and then broaden it out into overall in how you would better deal with things in your life. Again, it's a narrative, and the focus on detail and the focus on personal strengths that you would like to be able to bring forward in kind of just a vision of what you look like, again, in the specific circumstance, but then widening it out into just kind of generally overall as you are more capable of bringing your agency into your life.
Pause the recording and write. So those are the pieces that distinguish true hope, constructive hope, hope that actually really transforms us, from wishful thinking. All three pieces need to be there. We need to start believing in our agency. The way you can start believing in your own agency isn't to just try to talk yourself into something you don't believe. You take little steps every night. If you write every night what went well and why, just 5 minutes. What went well and why, and just learn to start recognizing when you do things well, and start to recognize your agency in little shifts. Like I said, little shifts go a long way. And what happens is you're training the neural nets in your brain to see your own capabilities and to believe in your own capabilities. And so if you can do that just every night, what went well and why, 5 minutes, it doesn't have to be a lot. Or do it, when I do this writing, I do it every morning for the day before. I do my gratitude and I do what went well and why. It's a super, super, super effective practice. So, what went well and why, contrast versus clarity, really having a clear vision of what it would look like, whatever it is, whatever issue that you're dealing with, whatever it is, really clear vision of what it would look like if it were working. And again, I'm not talking about the steps to get there. Those come once you see the end vision. But if you're just trying to figure it out and trying to figure it out and trying to figure it out and then get to that end vision, it doesn't work. So you need to have the end vision crystal clear. And then the more you begin to write with clarity, the more the answers just begin to emerge. So we've got the pathways, we've got agency and pathways, and then a very clear vision of yourself, vision of your best possible future self in that situation. In the next session, we're going to start talking about your best possible future self generally that you want to bring forward into the world. But for this one, it's again just kind of focused in on, in this situation, what would you look like? Not just what would the situation look like, but what would be your characteristics? What would be your behaviors? What would be your strengths? How would you bring your deepest self into those? And what would that really look like? And so we've got some homework, and I'm going to talk about the homework right now. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go into the guided meditation, and the guided meditation is called Heart for Hope, and it's going to ask you to actually capitalize on all three of these activities and really bring a clear image into that deep meditation. So your homework for this session is to do the activity What Went Well and Why for at least 10 minutes every day. And again, the idea is just to focus on, paying attention to the things that did go well, and especially paying attention to the agency that you had in having those things go well. And they don't have to be major things. If you're struggling to find something big, it doesn't have to be something big. The idea is just to catch it and to train your neural nets, little steps along the way, to recognize that you really do have some agency in the things that are going well in your life. The second thing is a practice I call finding the good. And the practice in finding the good, it's based on the discerning clarity exercise, or the contrasted clarity exercise. And basically what that practice is just to stop and pause. Again, it's just in the moment practice to just stop and pause 4 times a day whenever you find something that represents the clarity side of that chart. So in other words, every time you see a little inkling of something that could lead, or an opportunity that could lead, again, I'm not asking you to figure it out right now, but I am asking you to be aware enough to pay attention when opportunities do arise of something that might be a sign of something that a step you might be able to take. So just pause and just notice, just be hyper aware of noticing. Again, 4 times a day, just see if you can notice when something is making itself known. And again, I'm not talking about big answers. I'm just talking about little steps. So just finding the good, finding the little steps that might contribute to that clarity side of that activity. And then the last is a practice Heart for Hope, which we're going to go get into right now. And again, the practice really takes into account the activities that you did. So it's based on the activities that you did. You're going to go into a deep guided meditation, and what you're going to do is you're going to kind of have a vision of yourself in that specific circumstance, and what it would look like if it were really working, really deep into the imagery of what it would look like if it were really working. And again, the more you do it, the more effective it's going to be, because what that is doing is training yourself, your psyche, your brain, your heart, your whole embodied experience, to be able to find the things that are going to contribute to that hope, and kind of manifest those in your life. So the more you do this practice, is a very, very, very powerful practice. The more you do the practice, the better it's going to be. We're going to go into that practice right now, but I'd like you to do it at least once more if you are called to do so. And again, journal about your experience. So we're going to go into the ending practice, Heart for Hope. So you need to pause the recording until you can find a time and a space that it will be uninterrupted for about 25 to 30 minutes. It'll be a first introduction to the practice, and then the practice itself. And then I'll see you the next session. Heart for Hope. Introduction.
Heart for Hope asks you to take what you learned in the reflection for the Discern Clarity exercise and create an image of yourself flourishing in those areas that you wrote about. Look back over the Discern Clarity exercise and briefly let an image of yourself beyond the specific struggle you identified emerge. Giving some pre-thought to this image will help you better focus in the practice. Pay attention to detail. In the nurture step of this practice, you will be asked to deeply imagine yourself flourishing in those specific areas. It is helpful to focus on the details you wrote about in the reflection and deeply experience the sense of flourishing. If you cannot cultivate this sense or it does not feel authentic, then revisit a time in your life when you experienced a similar sense of flourishing. It can be a much smaller event. It could be as simple as remembering how proud you felt when you first learned to tie your shoes. Once you begin to activate those neural nets, you will increase your capacity to imagine more significant events. This practice invites you to deeply rest in a sense of accomplishment or flourishing that is true and authentic and specific to an area of your life in which you would like to improve or excel. Keep in mind, it is the felt sense of the experience that is most important to transform your neural nets. So forcing yourself to imagine a sense of flourishing when it is not authentic won't work. After reading over the Discern Clarity exercise and giving some thought to what your situation would actually look like if it were working, find a place where you can sit or lay down comfortably uninterrupted for about 25 minutes. Keep your journal close, as after the practice you may want to record your experience and any insights that came up. Heart for Hope. Practice. As we begin, let your awareness find your breath. Let your awareness find your breath at a focal or still point in your torso that feels comfortable for you to immerse yourself in the experience of breathing. It's not a controlled breath. It's a very comfortable, very natural breathing pattern where you can feel at one with your breath. If it feels comfortable to do so, extend the out breath just a little bit longer than the in breath. If you'd like, you can repeat the word release silently to yourself on every out breath. And as you do so, physically feel the sensation of release throughout your mind and body. It feels like your whole body is releasing a deep sigh. If it feels comfortable to do so, add in a couple of intentional and audible sighs. Physically feel the sensation of release throughout your mind and body. As we go through the meditation, somewhere in the background, keep part of your awareness always on this breathing pattern. Now notice where your thoughts are. Don't engage in the thought, but just notice. Notice your thoughts from a third person, witnessing or observing point of view, almost as if you were observing somebody else's thoughts. From this disengaged point of view, you might not even notice the content of your thoughts as much as the activity of your mind. Again, just notice. Notice if there is anything particularly present in your thoughts for which it might be helpful to promise yourself you will go back and address at another time, if they can just let you be for the time being. Acknowledge them and promise yourself you will do so. And feel those thoughts beginning to gently drift away. Now notice what you're feeling. Again, from a third person, witnessing or disengaged point of view, maybe even with a little curiosity. Don't engage in the feeling, just notice. Possibly as if you were observing someone else feeling that way. Maybe even with a little disengaged curiosity or surprise. Notice that what you are feeling may or may not have anything to do with what your thoughts are. Again, just notice. Notice the context and texture of what you are feeling, and notice if it comes from a different part of your body than where your thoughts are manifest. Don't think about it too much, just notice. Notice if there is anything particularly present in what you are feeling for which it might be helpful to promise yourself you will go back and address at another time, if these feelings can let you be for the time being. Now notice your bodily sensations. Do a quick body scan from your toes, very slowly up through your body, and notice particular places of sensation, anxiety, or discomfort. Again, just noticing without judgment or engaging in the sensation. Notice the context and texture of those bodily sensations. Maybe noticing with a distant curiosity. Keeping a disengaged point of view, notice if there is an emotional component associated with the sensations. Notice the context and texture of those bodily sensations, and notice if they carry for you some intuitive message. Just listen and be open with a receptive and non-judgmental full presence without thinking about it or analyzing. Now we will refocus your physiology to allow you to be able to go deeper in the meditation. Continuing to keep your background awareness always on your breath, bring your foreground awareness and attention to your eyes. Release the stress and tension throughout all the tiny little muscles around your eyes, the muscles all through the eye sockets and behind your eyes. Now release all the tiny little muscles throughout the rest of your face, around your cheeks, your jaws, your eyebrows. It may feel like you are losing all expression on your face. Now release through your shoulders. Let your shoulders fall down and back as you are releasing the tightness surrounding them. If it feels comfortable to do so, Very slightly and gently raise your sternum, which is the midline bone of your rib cage. Now bring all of your awareness back to your breath at a focal point in your torso that feels comfortable for you to fully immerse yourself back to the experience of breathing. Now imagine a wave of relaxation starting at your toes and coming through and around your body. I will name body parts, and as the wave of relaxation concentrates on and makes its way through each body part, deeply feel the sensation of release and relaxation of those same body parts. So this wave of relaxation is starting at your toes, making its way through the balls of your feet and deep into the tissue of the arches of your feet, very slowly up through your ankles. And now this wave of relaxation is slowly making its way up your lower leg, and you can feel the deep sense of release of the muscle tissue of your calf and back and your shin and front. And very slowly now this wave of relaxation is making its way through your knee joint, and you can feel the sensation of release through all the tendons and ligaments that hold that joint together. And now this wave of relaxation is making its way slowly up your thigh, and as it does so, you can feel it deeply penetrating the muscle tissue in the front of the thigh, the muscle tissue in the back of the thigh, feeling the deep sense of release all throughout your thigh. Now this wave of relaxation is making its way through your hip joint. And as it does so, it is deeply releasing all the muscles and tendons and ligaments that hold the joint together, and you can feel a deep release through the whole joint. Now this wave of relaxation is slowly making its way up your lower torso. You can now feel a deep sense of relief through your whole pelvic girdle, your lower abdominal area, your lower back. Now it is slowly making its way on up to about the height of your waist, and as it reaches your waist, bring all your awareness now to your back. Now this wave of relaxation is concentrated, traveling up your back muscles, starting at the muscles on either side of your spine, deeply penetrating and releasing the muscle tissue as it makes its way up. Now it is releasing all the muscle tissue surrounding your shoulder blade area and into the shoulder joint itself, and you can feel your shoulders letting go of any residual tension, falling further down and back as your body lets go and releases. And now this wave of relaxation is simultaneously making its way down each arm, first deeply penetrating and releasing the muscle tissue of your upper arm, and down through the elbow and down through your forearm and into your wrists, your hands, your fingers, and you can feel a profound sense of release of all the stress you typically carry all through your hands. And now this wave of relaxation is at the base of your neck, and it is slowly traveling up the back of your neck, deeply releasing the muscle tissue of the neck as it progresses. And now it is at the base of your skull, like a cap beginning to unfold and encircle your skull. Imagine this cap of relaxation slowly unfolding around the top and the sides of your skull simultaneously, and as it does so, you can feel yourself letting go of any residual stress or tension that you typically carry all through your head. And now it is like a curtain coming down all across your forehead, This wave of relaxation is slowly making its way down over your forehead, gently over your eyebrows, deep into your eye sockets, and releasing any residual tension in all the tiny little muscles surrounding your eyes. Now releasing all through your face, your cheeks. It feels like you are losing all of your expression on your face. Now it is traveling around your chin, your jaw, down into your neck and throat area. And now this wave of relaxation is approaching your chest area, and once again you can feel your rib cage opening and releasing any residual tightness or tension. You may feel a very slight rise in your sternum, feeling of expansiveness. And now all your awareness is back to being fully immersed in the experience of breathing at a focal point that is comfortable for you. There's nothing left but you and your breath. Now, if it feels comfortable to do so, cultivate a tiny little smile and notice how the sensations of your body shift. Now you will nurture an intentional state of true hope, hope based on self-agency, clarity, and a vision of yourself beyond the struggle. As you nurture a sense of true and authentic hope, scan through your mind over the exercises in the chapter. Specifically bring up the feeling of agency that you acquired from the what went well and why exercise. Reflect back on some of your strengths. As you deeply feel this state of self-agency, relax your shoulders and raise your sternum. Let yourself experientially feel a sense of accomplishment, knowing that you had something to do with your successes. Now, from this state of empowerment, reflect back on the image of yourself that you created in the clarity exercise. Imagine yourself flourishing in that specific area of your life in which you would like to improve or excel. Hold an image of yourself flourishing in those areas that you wrote about. Let an image of yourself beyond the specific struggle you identified emerge. Pay attention to detail and deeply experience the sense of flourishing. What do you look like? How are you handling yourself in the situation? How are you standing? Moving? Deeply feel the sensation of your new posture. Imagine yourself and vividly feel the experiential state of being beyond the struggle. What are the new circumstances like? Imagine the specifics of the new situation and deeply embody your sense of self in the new environment. Bask in this state of knowing. If you cannot cultivate this sense, or it does not feel authentic, then revisit a time in your life when you experienced a similar sense of flourishing. It can be a much smaller event, but similar in nature. The important thing is that you authentically feel a sense of accomplishment. Once you acquire this felt state, see if you can increase your capacity to imagine more significant events. Deeply rest in a sense of accomplishment or flourishing that is true and authentic, and notice the details of what it looks like when it is working. I'm going to be silent for several minutes. During this time, fully immerse yourself in the felt experience of hope manifest. Now, ever so slightly, bring a subtle shift in awareness to yourself deep in the meditation. Don't come out of it. It is more like you are observing or witnessing yourself deep in this state. Continuing to bring an awareness of yourself deep in the meditative state, pause and reflect. Notice if any intuitive insights come up, which may or may not be formulated in words. It is important to spend some time in awareness of this liminal state or in-between state, as it integrates the parts of your brain to more easily access the meditative state in your conscious moments. Spend a few more moments in this liminal state. Through a witnessing awareness of yourself deep in this meditative state, try to make a cellular memory of this experience. In other words, it is like you are trying to cement this experience in every cell of your body. Now, at your own pace, begin to bring a little more awareness to how you're feeling, and a little more awareness to the sensations of your body. Move your hands, move your toes, ever so slowly and at your own pace. Make sure you re-ground yourself in your body by moving your arms and legs. Making sure you are re-grounded in the room you are in. Take several deep breaths in and open your eyes when you feel comfortable. Pause and reflect for several moments and notice any insights and reflect on your experience. Jot down any thoughts about your experience that you might want to hold on to. Spend a few moments journaling if it is appropriate. It is a very, very rich time to journal, as many insights will continue to emerge as you bring your experience to more conscious awareness through the stream of consciousness writing process.